Q&A session for all of you folks who will be using the SCM Globe simulation software in your class. Also, my colleague Steve Koji will participate, and he's on the line, as well as one of your professors, Frank Shear. So, Steve, why don't you say a word, and then Frank, follow in after Steve. Go ahead, Steve.
Good afternoon, or good evening, I guess, back east. Yeah, welcome to SCM Globe. Mike and I'll walk you through, any questions that you might have in particular. We're hoping that you've come with those, but if not, we'll just introduce it in general. Frank, go ahead.
Well, and I'm certainly pleased to see the students attending. The instructor for ASCM 631. So, Jim, maybe you want to say something too, but otherwise, looking forward to a productive session tonight, and hope that everybody came prepared to ask questions.
All right, and yes, I see Jim Bryant is joining us. Jim, it looks like you're still establishing your audio connection. Can you hear us?
I can hear you fine. Can you hear me?
Yes. Go ahead. Say a few words.
Yeah, I'd like to welcome everybody to the webinar tonight. Michael has one of these each semester, and we're most grateful for that. He does a fabulous job. I'd encourage everybody, as I have the last 2 weeks in my class, which is supply chain, also the ASCM 631 parallel course that Frank's also teaching. So I'd encourage you to ask questions. I've gotten several the last few weeks and have held them up pending this call. So please don't be bashful and jump out there and ask your questions so you have enriched and deeper learning of SCM Globe, please.
Yes, this is definitely about all of you folks asking questions. We love to talk, but that won't be half as informative as you guys asking questions. What we're going to do is maybe we'll start out with a brief overview, and I'll mute everyone's phones except for myself and Jim and Frank and Steve. But then after that, can you all see the chat box? I see Olga Aquino has said hello. So if you type in your questions as we go on the chat box, Steve is going to monitor the chat box. We'll answer the technical questions. Your professors can answer questions related to your course. So go ahead and as we move along here, just type in your questions and we'll get to everybody. So I'll start with try to hold it to about 10 minutes here or less, intro overview of SCM Globe, and then let's start getting your questions. So to begin with, when you log on, you've all obviously figured out that there is a fairly substantial online guide, and we won't go into all that. I'll just kind of show you the tip of that iceberg, and it's right here where it says Start Here. If you click on Start Here, or when you're in the application, anywhere in the screens of the application, there will be a blue button that says Help. Either way, you'll get into the online guide. This is the Getting Started section. This Getting Started section is the product of about 5 years now of feedback, commentary from students and instructors. We want to get to the concentrated essence of how to model supply chains and how to use our software. The feedback we get is 15 to 30 minutes, and people are good to go. That doesn't mean you'll know everything in 15 to 30 minutes. It means you'll know enough to get started, and then you can learn more as you go because, like we said, it's all here in the online guide. So it's worth your time to go through the Getting Started section. As you go through here, you're going to notice that there are 6 links. You've probably all looked at the how to activate your prepaid account by now. So then the next one is video tutorials. There are 3 short videos that show you how to get started. Click on them, take a look. The main idea is right here, and that is that you will be creating very accurate models that are also very easy to understand. And you'll be doing them with only 4 entities. Obviously, there are many kinds of products, there are many kinds of facilities, vehicles, and delivery routes. But those are the 4 entities. We won't. You guys can look at the videos here. The first one's about 10 minutes. The other 2 are about 5 minutes each. And if you look at those 3 videos, a lot of people tell us, they look at the videos and they're good to go. I'm a little bit slower. I like to learn from videos as well. I like to learn from text and screenshots. So the other links in the Getting Started section are just that. Often we'll repeat the video and then we'll show you screenshots we pull out of the video, some text commentary. So any way that you learn best, we want to address that, and we're very much interested in your feedback, things that we could make clearer, things that we could explain a little bit more deeply. Any feedback you give us other than, well, this sucks. Okay, tell us it sucks, but then tell us what we could do to make it better. So any kind of feedback you can give us is much appreciated. And I think the other thing that is really important for everyone to know is the FAQs. What does FAQ stand for? Right, frequently asked questions. There are 7, not 38 or 105. There are 7 frequently asked questions. Guarantee every one of you will run into 1 or more issues that require you to know, or that will cause you to be glad you know the answer to one of these 7 FAQs. Otherwise, you'll spend hours and hours puzzling, getting frustrated, and then when you get frustrated, then you're going to say unkind things about us and the software, and then that's bad. We really want you to have a good experience. We want you to love this software. In addition to the 7 frequently asked questions, there is the bug report. And yes, we have bugs in this software. There are 5 of them that we know about. The bugs are not in the simulation logic. So the simulation logic is uncannily accurate, but in the editing that you do to set up your supply chain, make changes to your supply chain, and then in the reporting that comes from the simulation logic, that's where these bugs occur. Each bug has a workaround, so it's not like you're just dead in the water, SOL, we can't do anything. But each bug, for instance, there's a bug in downloading vehicle data. And again, I'm not going to read them all because you can check them out here. But then we tell you, here's what to do. Here's what to do to work around it. So with that, if you take a look at that Getting Started and those FAQs, you will be good to go. Now, let's go ahead and we will log in. Now, as soon as you log in, you're in your account management screen. There are only 3 screens. Count them. 1, 2, 3. Only 3 screens in this app, and there's a lot going on each screen. So, but again, in our attempt to really simplify that user interface, make it engaging, 3 screens. The first one is this account management screen. From here you can view the library. You're seeing, obviously I have a lot of active supply chain models I'm working on. Your account management screens are broken up into 2 parts. Top part is your active models, and then the bottom part is what we call your save states. It's your backups as you work along. Make backup copies. We do not have an undo feature. So if you spend a couple of weeks coming up with a great supply chain design and you want to make one more change and it turns out to be a disaster, that's when you're going to wish that you had made a backup copy, because once you make the changes, there is no undo feature. So that said, you're all going to be working the ones of you in Frank Scher's class are going to be using the Cincinnati Seasonings case study. And Jim, I believe the ones in your class are going to be using collaborative supply chains. Is that the one there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so you click on that view library and you'll see these are the ones available. There's a lot of them, and we encourage curiosity. So Cincinnati Seasonings is a great one to get started with. Collaborative. These are in order of generally increasing sophistication, reality, challenge. We have both commercial supply chains as well as humanitarian and disaster response supply chains, such as this Nepal disaster. We worked with the World Food Program on that one. It is real. It's made from real data. It's quite accurate. It shows what they did responding to that Nepal disaster earthquake in 2015. We also have military supply chains all the way from Alexander the Great to Battle of Smolensk, and actually there's one here that is kind of a combination where we have done some work with this scenario planning, humanitarian intervention in Syria, which involves both a military and a humanitarian supply chain. So a lot going on there. To import a supply chain model into your own account, click on the import button. And like if I click on import for Cincinnati Seasonings, give it a name. Any name will do. You can call it Ralph if you want to. I will call it, maybe I'll call it Mike's Supply Chain, or Mike's Cincinnati, Mike's Cincy Supply Chain. And I'm going to save it. When I save it, it will save. If I go back to my account, there's many ways to do things. And again, that's all part of making this user-friendly and engaging interface. I'm just going to pick one way of going through it, kind of the simple way, the way being a simple kind of guy, I will just do that. So think of your account management screen as the hub and then your other functions radiate out from that. Once you have your supply chain, you're either going to edit it or you're going to run simulations. And then, of course, you can save it, make backup copies. But that's all you're going to do. All right, so let's edit. I'm going to click on the edit button to edit it. We know we're in the edit screen. It says edit. This is some feedback we got 2 years ago from people, and it's amazing how little things can really make a difference. The edit screen and the simulation screen, as you'll see, look somewhat similar, and people were saying, "Hey, I get confused. I can't remember. Am I on the edit screen or the sim screen?" And remember, we've been working with the app for so long that we're blind. You guys are going to see things that we could not see. So please share that with us. Anyway, what you see in the edit screen is, you can see right here the 4 entities, and here they are along the accordion menu on the right side: products, facilities, vehicles, and routes. We have one product in this, although later on in the other supply chains, by the time you get to collaborative, we have about 8 products, and you can go up from there. So for a product, whenever you click on one of the entities, these are the 4 entities: products, facilities, vehicles, and routes. When you click on it, it'll tell you what we need to know to make a very accurate model here of this supply chain. So very small data sets create very accurate model, and because it's small data set, you can understand it as well. So all we need is name, price, weight, and shipping weight and volume. Once we go down, we'll take a look at facilities, and I'm just gonna close out the box there. Every time you click on one of the entities, it opens up a dialog box. It bounces the facility so we know which one we're talking about. Opens up a little dialog box, tells you what you need to know. And again, this is all we need to know about for a facility. It's storage. There's many different types of facilities as you start to get into creating them. They have their own icons, and they come with default values. Initially, you'll just use the default values, but as you get into each of these case studies, you're going to have to make changes to these values based on what you learned in the simulations. So all these numbers can be typed over. And when you pick a facility that has vehicles attached to it, such as the DC or the distribution center, you'll know that because all of a sudden, presto, you can see it on the map. So we also have really worked on using that map interface to be a context to understand a whole lot of data, situational awareness, as they say. And the idea here is that you can very quickly start to click through the model as we're doing right now and learn a lot about it in a hurry without having to, A, read some pretty serious differential equations, B, read pages and pages of text. So we're really focused on getting that user interface and the visual context for you. So again, you can tell about this facility. You know, I can tell, for instance, how much storage capacity it's got, what its rent costs are, operating costs. We can track carbon if you want to. You won't be doing that in these case studies here, but other case studies you do. There are some things like demand per day, production per day, quantity on hand. This is a warehouse, it's a DC, so there is no demand for the product, it simply flows through. Quantity on hand, we can see we have 4,000 of those spicy cubes on hand. Given that those spicy cubes are 1 cubic meter, we therefore are using 4,000 cubic meters of storage space out of 1,500 total available. Gives us a little, right there, we can see some other useful statistics. Once I have picked a facility that has vehicles and delivery routes which originate at that facility, and I know that the DC does because I can see it on the map, I can then click on vehicles, and here they are. And if I click on one of the vehicles, like truck 2, trick question, where does truck 2 go? Does anyone want to type in an answer in the chat box? First person to do so will win a gold star. Yes, that's right. Well, actually, it's Louisville, and I used to go to school at the University of Cincinnati, and I dated a girl from Louisville. And if you live in Louisville, it's pronounced Louisville. But that's right, absolutely. All right, Jason Rios, you win a gold star. Thank you for that answer. Okay, and then again, where does truck 3 go? Anyone want to win another gold star? Where is truck 3 going? I know you're being modest, you're holding back. Steve, where is truck 3 going? Can you tell? Yes, all right. Elisa, yes. Jason, yes. Exactly. The idea is that there's going to be some challenges here, but we don't want to make your brain get all bogged down learning the basics. So you see, I can see, for instance, truck 4 here looks like it's going to Indianapolis, up to Fort Wayne, and then back. And I can see now, once you've selected a vehicle, if I click on routes, I can see here's some detail about its route. So, and I'm going to close out some of these other boxes just so we can get a better look at this. So here's the route box. And it's telling us here's its distance, its time to complete that route. I can see truck number 4 is a medium-sized truck, so it can carry its carry volume of 60. Its max weight is 8,000 kilograms. I can see that it's going to the Indy store, dropping off 20 of the spicy cubes, then going on to Fort Wayne, dropping off 30. And again, later on, I can change any of these numbers. Like, I don't want to drop 20, I want to drop 22 or something like that. You can't drop a fraction of a product, but otherwise. So very quickly here, we have gone through the model itself. We've seen how the 4 entities are placed on the map. And again, one other thing here, as you start to work with the model, you're going to notice that things are placed in, although Cincinnati Seasonings is a make-believe company, the facilities are placed in real locations. In other words, we don't just have a factory somewhere in Cincinnati, maybe in the middle of a golf course or something. We have a factory where you would expect to see a factory, which is in an industrial park. It's, as I zoom in here, we're leveraging Google Maps. Close out that box. And I'm going to switch over to the satellite view and really take a look, zoom in there. So I can see that this is an industrial park. It's next to a big rail yard there. It's in downtown Cincinnati. The factory is a food processing factory. It's not a factory where we'd be smelting iron ore. But this is a realistic location for that factory. And as I pull back and I take a look at, for instance, where is the DC? Where is the distribution center? What I'm going to do is I'm going to click on the DC and we'll zoom in. And what is best practice? Best practice that you read, or you probably already know, probably a lot of you are probably already working in the business. You put your DC at a transportation node on the outskirts of town so your trucks don't get stuck in downtown traffic. That's a self-evident statement, maybe, or maybe it's just an abstract string of words. If we look right here, if we zoom in and see where the actual DC is, I can see it is where there is an intersection of two major highways. I can see that there's also a big freight rail yard there as well. I can see a lot of real companies are using this as a location for their distribution centers. You can see all the trucks in these yards. So obviously, again, these facilities are put in real locations. As you start to expand the Cincinnati Seasonings case and you start to add new stores, etc., you'll be asked to find real locations. Don't just, like I wouldn't want to drop it down here in the middle of the country club golf course. That would be absurd. You don't have stores there. So the more realistic you make your model, the more realistic the simulation will be, etc., etc. Let's switch back to the map view. And now what we're going to do is to run the simulation, I'm going to click on this button right here. It says simulation. All your buttons, all your navigation buttons will always be in the upper right corner. There's that blue help button in case you need help. I'm going to click on simulation. So it opens up a second browser tab. It will take a moment. It will paint that supply chain on a map of the world. That map, of course, is Google Maps. So we're leveraging the power of Google Maps, plus we've put our own logic layered in on top of that. And now what we're going to do is I'm going to click on play, and it will start to play the simulation. And as it does, I mean, time is being speeded up in the simulation, but if we were tracking these vehicles by a GPS unit in their, like the driver's cell phone, actually, these would be actually where they would, you're seeing the vehicles as they would really move there. Now, we have built deliberately 3 pitfalls into this simulation just to engage you and starting to figure out what should we do, depending on how you solve these problems. And there is no single right answer. This is not a multiple choice test. And basically, there's probably 100,000 different ways you could go about it, just like in the real world, which is not to say that all answers are equal. Hardly. There are always better answers, and the simulation data is what is there to help you find those better answers. So the first challenge that we run into is, we show right here, not enough storage space. Sometimes you'll get more than one error. So they'll always be listed. You'll get the little error box will pop up. You'll say, okay. And it will list all your errors here in the lower right corner. And so not enough storage space in the Fort Wayne store. Already notice I'm starting to get data as I've only run 2 days of the sim, but we're seeing the on-hand amounts. If I click on the vehicles tab, I can see here are the running costs of the vehicles so far, just by the end of day 2. Where my products are, both in value and number, where they're building up, where they're running out. Console is a whole boatload. It's all the data, and you can export that, although we'll wait until we generate a little bit more data before we export that. But we have a problem right now. Who wants to take a shot at what would we do? Our problem now is we have run out of storage space in Fort Wayne store. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to go over to the first tab I had open, which is the edit screen. So notice now I'm always flipping back between the edit screen where I'm making changes or creating my supply chain, and then the sim screen, the simulate screen, or as us hipsters call it, the sim screen. And basically that answers the question, how well does my model work? So I see I have a problem here. I'm going to go to the edit screen, and if I just need more space at Fort Wayne, I mean, there's many things I could do. I could A, deliver less, B, add more space. Those are a couple things that come to mind right away, and then variations on all of that.
Mike,
yeah, go ahead.
We have a suggestion here from Candace. It says, lighten the truck load or make the demand higher.
Good points. Good points. Now, to start with, and here, let me.
Abiola says add more space.
We can do all of those things. If I want to add more space, notice at first we had 850 in there. I could say, oh well, let's make it 1600. that would be the equivalent of if I'm the manager there in the Fort Wayne store, I call up a local public warehouse. I tell them, hey, I have an overstock situation. I need some more temporary storage space. Boom. They would be there within the hour. Their trucks would coordinate with my needs, etc. It would be practically as if I just suddenly built an addition onto my store. But of course, I would pay for it. My rent cost is going to go up. So you don't just add space. In the end, you do just add space. We did that. What we actually feel is the best way to go about this, and let me go over here. Another thing you should take a look at is the introduction to Cincinnati seasonings, as well as there is an introduction to collaborative supply chain. So in both cases, read the intro to the case study. There will be a lot of useful information. It'll get you off to a really good start, and then your professors will start to guide you from there. With Cincinnati, there's a little overview of what's going on here, what your challenge is, your main challenges, really central to any supply chain, which is how do I match supply and demand and do so at the lowest cost and lowest amount of inventory. Easy to say, really hard to do. And what we're seeing here are some screenshots as you get into it. Now, your first challenge right here, get that supply chain to run for 30 days, which is what we'll take a look at. And then as you keep scrolling down, there's a second challenge. As you keep scrolling down, there's a section here titled a few things you should not do, unless your professor says it's okay. But otherwise, just these few things. And here they are. They're right here. Don't reduce, people have observed you can make that supply chain run indefinitely if you reduce your product demand to zero. And you can also make your transportation costs go to zero as well, because there's no demand, there's no need to transport anything. Wow, you have come up with a long-running, low-price supply chain that would, of course, in the real world, have killed your company. So it is a solution, mathematically correct, but of course, it's absurd. So you can be absurd. We don't have there's no ban on being absurd, but of course, it's absurd. So I don't know if your professors would give you an A for being absurd, but the other thing is, for instance, don't increase or decrease initial on-hand inventory amounts. You'll find out that there are problems where too much inventory builds up or not enough is there. And people, again, have solved the entire problem by simply increasing the amount of inventory on hand at the start before you even start. And that's like just suddenly making inventory appear or disappear. We're not here to tell you what you can't do, except some things on the face of it are absurd. And all we're saying is, don't be absurd. But if you were modeling another supply chain, if you were modeling your own company's supply chain, creating your starting scenario, obviously all of these things, we're not here to prevent you from doing things. And then default rent costs, you will find out, are a little higher than what you'd see in the real world. So again, initially, just use the defaults. But as you start to get into it, you'll notice they're a little bit high. If you're looking at cities in North America, this right here, there's a very useful link, so you can start to get real rent costs as of today. So all these numbers vary over time. We've given you realistic defaults, but again, check with your professors before you start changing the defaults at the start of your STEM. After you start getting going, as we're doing right now, you'll have to start making some changes. Initially, you probably don't want to change your demand numbers. But notice we did we increased our storage as a way to respond to that. I could also, if I want to, and of course, always remember to click update. It won't update the model unless you click update. Now, if I wanted to, for instance, deliver less, then I know that Fort Wayne is being served from a truck out of the DC because I can see it right here. And if I go to the vehicles, I know it was that vehicle, it was that multi-stop route there. And so I can see the truck now, the delay between departures there, see, it's 10. That means that the vehicle will run it's route, come back to its origin, wait for 10 hours, and run again. If I want to make the truck run less frequently, I could say, well, hey, let's make it run every 20 hours. So, that's what that's about. All right, so we just made 2 changes. Now, let's see what happens. We increased our storage and we decreased our our truck delivery frequency. So I wonder how that's going to work. I'm going to go to my sim screen. I am going to now, that button says here, reload the supply chain. So we're going to reload the supply chain that we just made changes, the model that we just made changes to, and we'll run it again. Let's see what happens. Play. Are there more questions while we're watching this run?
Show them how you can scroll through on the right.
Yeah, if we take a look while this is running, we can start to see, here's how that's building up. If I click over to some of these other stores, like the Louisville store, I can see, we're not keeping up with demand there in Louisville. I can see it's on a nosedive. What's going on in Indy? Wow, we're doing good in Indy. When you see a flat line like that, it means you've matched supply and demand. That's a good thing. All right. You have run out of spicy cube in Louisville store. We could see that. We as we were going through here, boom. So on day 7, we run out of product in Louisville. Question: what should we do to fix the problem in Louisville? Who's got an answer? There must be some experienced supply chain managers already who would have a good idea. What would we do? Yes, increase the supply, increase delivery, increase truckload to that area. Yes, 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 and yes. That's exactly it. And what you're going to start to realize is a lot of this starts out as common sense, but then you do need to fine tune it. So it's not just winging it. But initially, especially as you're getting started here, we suggest you not worry too much about fine tuning it. Just do whatever you think you need to do to make it run for 30 days. And then you'll circle back and you'll start fine tuning it. You'll add more facilities and then you'll start fine tuning your supply chain to optimize it. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to the edit screen here to get more product down to Louisville. Let's take a look. Which truck was it that goes down there? Let's see, truck number 2 goes to Louisville. Truck number 3, no, that's Indy. We know truck number 4 is that multi-stop. And then truck number 1 is also. So we got 2 routes going down there to Louisville. Let's look at the truck. I see this one right here, this truck number 1. Now, it's a small truck. That other truck number 2, what is it? Truck number 2 is also a small truck. 40, the carry volume there is 40. To keep our math simple, that means if the shipping case of the spicy cubes, the pallet load size case, is about a cubic meter, all right, I can get 40 of them in there. If I max out both trucks, I would get 80 of them. What is our demand at Louisville? If I go to my sim screen and I take a look, I click on the Louisville store, I can see my demand is 100 per day. So now I could send my trucks down there more frequently. Now here's another thing I could do is I could say, hey, what about making that small truck into a large truck whose carry volume is 110 so I could meet the daily demand. So maybe what I want to do, maybe 1 large truck once a day is better than 2 small trucks several times a day, probably so. I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna make the truck that runs down there a large truck. I'm gonna update that. I'm going to now, was it truck number 2 that we just updated? Yes. I'm now going to click on its route, and right now where it's only dropping off 20 down there, let's have it drop off 100. That's the daily demand. Update that. And then while we're at it, we can say, why do we even need that other truck that's going down there, that truck number 1, that small truck? I don't need it. So I'm gonna remove it. I've highlighted it. I'm gonna click on the remove button and click remove, and away it goes. And now let's see how well will this run. So again, I'm going back to my edit screen. I'm clicking on reload the supply chain, and we'll run it again. Are you seeing a certain pattern to the way we're attacking these problems that we encounter in the simulation?
Mike, we do have a question about when do you save?
Yep.
So maybe you want to show them how to save as soon as it runs.
As soon as this runs its course and finds another problem, we'll save it. But notice, go ahead, Frank, did you have something?
I was just going to go on. Candace is saying all the changes we're doing are expensive. Do we have a limited amount of money to work with? How would we manage that aspect?
Well, what we're doing is we're taking an iterative approach to the problem. The first thing we're doing is, like we said, just throw money at the problem, make it run for 30 days. Do whatever you feel you need to do. And then what we'll show you is that once you get 30 days worth of data, we have some reporting templates. We'll start to analyze what you've done and point out areas where you can make improvements. So you will come up with a much more cost-effective solution than what we're doing right now. We're in the just get it to run for 30 days stage. So not enough storage capacity in the seasonings factory is our problem. One of the things you'll start to notice in the factory is that if we go back to the edit screen here, we take a look at the factory. I can see, for one thing, there is a shuttle truck there that's moving product back and forth between the factory and the DC. I can see that my production there is 350 per day. I can see I've already got this much on hand. Let's see, what am I doing with that delivery route between the factory? There's the factory truck. I'll do that. Okay, it's a medium-sized truck. It's running every 8 hours, meaning in a 24-hour period, it's running about 3 times. When I take a look at the delivery route, we're dropping off 30 every time we go, so 30 times 3 is 90. So we're moving about 90 of the spicy cubes every day out of the factory and into the DC, but I can see that my factory is producing 350, so it is obviously, we're producing more than we're moving out, and that's why one of the reasons why we've run out of product there. So again, there's a lot of things we could do. What is one idea? How could I solve this problem of too much product and not enough space in the factory?
Kimberly, can you?
So I just someone hit the feedback button there, and I muted everyone. But let me just unmute Steve and Frank and Jim. There we go. So unmute. So anyway, what should we do to fix this last problem? If we can fix this last problem, we might get this thing to run for 30 days or more. Anyone have any ideas? Any thoughts about what we should do to fix our problem there at the factory? Well, one of the things we could do is we could say maybe we want to move more product from the factory to
Mike, yeah. Candace is saying, what was the error? So can you just flip
let's go back
to the screen to show right. That? Yeah.
That's why we keep you always keep these two tabs open, just so you can always go back and see, now what was that, and what was some of the data surrounding this? I can look at my vehicle costs. I can look at where my products, are building up or running out. So I can see what was going on at some of the other locations as well. So anyway, in this case, not enough storage capacity. That's our problem. There's a lot of things we can do. We could deliver more product to the DC. We could make less product. We could, just like in the real world, there are many things you can do. So again, who's got a thought about Candace? What do you think we ought to do to solve this problem right now about not enough storage space in the factory? Off the top of your head, that's what SIMs are for. Yes. All right. Gregory Banks, move product to another location. Let's just go with that, because we can always come back and try different things as we start to learn more about how the supply chain works. So to move
Candace is also suggesting to slow down the production.
And because right now, when you slow down production, and here's something else. In the intro to Cincinnati Seasonings, we have put a lot of useful links, which you will find useful as you start to get into working with the simulation, you start to fine tune your solution. One of them is this one here, which we'll talk about in a minute. Another one is here. Oh, here's a link to something useful, reducing inventory operating costs. So again, if I click on that one, there's a lot of stuff we can, here are some ideas that you can read through, as well as the famous EOQ equation, economic order quantity. When you start to deliver in economic order lot sizes, you'll see that your simulations get more efficient. And we give you a very precise example about how to apply this. So what you'll find is that the answers you're learning and reading about in your courses, the best practices that you read about in your textbook, also will give you really good answers to solve problems here in the simulation. So this is not a game. It's not arbitrary. We didn't make this up. It's a make-believe company, but what works in the real world works in the sims, and what works in the sims works in the real world. So what we're going to do is let's do both things. Let's go to our edit screen. Now, one of the things we ought to do, because we're just good supply chain managers, is we ought to sync up our factory production levels with our demand at the stores. And if we go out to the stores, we look at what their demand is. I just happen to know that demand every day, combined store demand every day, is about 190. And when I look at what's going on here in the factory, we're producing a whole heck of a lot of inventory. So maybe what I'm going to do is say, hey, let's produce a little less inventory. Maybe we'll just let's try with 200. So we're going to produce a little less inventory. I'm going to update that. And then we're going to take a look at the vehicles. So if we click on the vehicles, and we see that we got a medium-sized truck running every 8 hours. Well, I could make a medium-sized truck run every 2 hours. But then again, there's that whole question of, does a smaller truck running more frequently cost more or less than a larger truck running less frequently? My guess, based on economies of scale, is that maybe a large truck running less frequently would be a good way to go. Let's do that. So we're going to make that truck, that shuttle truck there, a large truck. I'll leave the delay between departures as is for now, because I could put so much more on there. I can always come back and try, depending on what my simulation shows me. I can change anything I want. I'm going to say, all right, instead of dropping off 30, I could put 110 in there. That's how much you would. If I try to overload my truck, if I try to say, oh, put, just really squeeze them in there, put 200 in there, and then try to, well, in this case, what we're seeing here is one of the 5 bugs we've talked about. You see this endless twirler there? I love computers. I've devoted the best years of my life to computers, but I have a short patience level with them. And when they start doing this kind of thing, don't just sit there and go, gosh, I wonder how long that's going to twirl. Just take charge, click, enough of that, Mr. Computer. Stop whatever it is you're doing. So I click that out. I'm going to refresh the model. Sometimes the connection between the model and our servers, which are hosted up in the Amazon Web Services cloud, will get interrupted. So I closed out that box. I hit the browser refresh on Chrome. It's that one. There's other, if you're using Firefox or Safari. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back. We're looking at the factory, so I'm going to click on the factory. We got a good read there on the production. Let's see, did we get that? Okay, we have. Our truck is good, and the last thing we were doing was routes. And we were going to change our routes, and we're gonna max out that truck. First, I was just going to show you that if you try to overload your truck like 200, or well, 20 will take, but 200, you're going to get an error message saying you've overloaded your truck. It will check for both volume and weight. So. All right, can't do that, but I know I can stuff 110 of them in there. So let's do that. We'll max out the truck, update that, and now let's see. I bet we have a supply chain that will run for 30 days or more. It might not be the prettiest, it might not be the most cost effective, but now I've got something, I can get data, I can start to run some reports, and I can. Yes, another question here. Can we add another truck? Absolutely, and you will be adding new facilities and new trucks as you plunge into the second challenge and beyond with this. But let's just and that's again why it's such a good idea to read the introduction to the Cincinnati Seasonings case study, because you'll get all of this. You'll get a sense of what's going on. Your next challenge will be to add some new stores, and then the question is, well, how do I serve those stores? Do I use existing trucks? Should I add a new truck? And the answer is always, hey, try it. Run the simulation. See what works best. Sometimes you can add a new truck. Sometimes you can use one that's already there. Try it. The simulation will tell you what works best. So there's some questions here about how to control the frequency. There's a lot of useful information. We're trying to feed it, kind of break it into bite-sized pieces. We don't want to. I used to have a boss who would say, "Don't make me drink from the fire hose," meaning don't just do a 100-mile-an-hour data dump on me. I won't be able to absorb it. So we're trying to break things into smaller pieces and let you take it a bite at a time. So here we are. Now what we're going to do is, and also the play speed. There are different speeds here. We think it is very much worth your while to let it run slowly at first, because you'll get a mental model. And I don't mean to. Mental models are essential. Computers are great, but if you don't know what you're doing and you have no idea of how things work, trusting in a computer is a fool's game. The computer will just as happily lead you efficiently off of a bridge as to the promised land. So it's a good idea to have, as we say, real intelligence in charge of artificial intelligence.
Yeah, and the computer can also burn you. So Mike, show them how to save it, and then how to download for their recording. In the interest of time here, because we are starting to run out.
If I click on the from my edit screen, if I click on options here, there's something called create a save state, so I can save things as I'm working, and I create a save state. It's just going to take a snapshot. If I go back to my account screen, I can also click on the save button, and this will ask me, so if I maybe at the end of each week I want to create something, the first save that I did just uses the existing name. If I want to call this maybe week 1 solution, I can call that week 1, because maybe I want to send it into my professor and say, hey, or maybe I want to share it with other people in the class and say, look at this idea that I've created here. What do you think? So I can do that, and then I click on save. In both cases, if I scroll down to the save state part of my screen, here was the first one. I just saved it a moment ago, called Mike Cincy, and then here's my week 1. If I click on restore, it will restore it as if, maybe I made a mess and I don't want to continue down that path. I can restore from an earlier version. Or if I download this, it will download to my PC. I can then attach it to an email. It's a .json, or we call them JSON files. I can attach that to an email, send it to anyone who can then log into their SCM Globe account and open the file. You can't open the file unless you're in SCM Globe. But once you are, that's a great way to share supply chains with everybody. There is also some reporting that goes on here. And now, whenever you run your simulation, when it stops, either because you click on the stop button because you've run 30 days or more, or because it finds an error, like what has happened here. You can see there's that error that's happened right there. This button, Export Results to Excel, will appear. If I click on it, and we use Excel generically, it exports a CSV file, comma separated value file. It will open in any spreadsheet known in the modern world. And so we ran our simulation for 6 days, so it's showing me each 6 days, and then the data is broken up into segments. The first segment here is my on-hand amount, so it's showing me, if I just open this up a bit, it's showing me by day, by facility, how much I have on hand. Then it's showing me my demand. Demand is held constant over the 30 days that we run these simulations, so but you can see what that is. Production also is held constant. You can see what that is. We had set that production to 200. So there's a lot of information here. You can what is coming into facilities, what's going out of facilities, my cost, which is cumulative numbers here, my vehicle cost. So there are the vehicles right there. So now let me also show you there are some reporting templates which will really help you organize that data. And again, there's some useful links that you'll find at the bottom of every case study introduction. If you go down towards the bottom, they're usually scattered in various places, but always you'll see them at the bottom where it says, remember, there is a spreadsheet template you can download and import. So if I click on that analyzing simulation data, I'll go to another page in the online guide. And at the bottom, there is a discussion of all of, here's how you download simulation data to a spreadsheet reporting template, as well as, and so we show you how to prepare it. When you get your 30 days, here's an example of the kind of profit and loss statement, as well as some KPIs that you can generate from that data, which will start to focus you in on what's going on, and you'll start to be able to progressively improve your original solution. If I click on this right here, download a copy of the reporting template, it is in Google Docs. You can download a copy to your own PC, so you don't need edit rights on this. Just download a copy right there in blue. How to do that? I click on the file button right there, and then I say download as Microsoft Excel. Boom, there it is. If I open it up, I now have my own copy. Here it is. You'll notice there are two tabs. Here's the reporting tab in front, and then the simulation data is here in the back. So you download the reporting template, and then you download your data, run it through that, and then you're going to generate all this data here. Again, we are coming up tight on the time. But
okay, so Frank, Mike, just want to point out that Frank has suggested that you want to file a JSON each week and save your JSON file at the end of the week, and he points out that it can be posted to the weekly SCM Globe discussion as part of your changes that you've made, in your discussion of those. And he also says, be certain to also save spreadsheets for each week. He said that they're extremely helpful to reference when preparing the Week 10 summary report. So just in case people aren't seeing the notes here, I wanted to make sure that that was clear. Right. Now we have from Gregory Banks, vehicle cost. Is that to rent, or is that we own the vehicle and that is gas and maintenance costs? Well,
we haven't answered that question. We have simply said your cost is your cost per kilometer. If you went to a website like, say, Ryder Truck Rental, you could get that. I think a lot of companies, the whole lease versus buy situation, you can do your own research. Initially, just go ahead and use the defaults. They're relatively accurate, relative to each other. But do the research. Those numbers change like a stock market. They change practically, they do change every day.
So Frank has addressed that. Frank has addressed that. He said, vehicle cost is the cost per trip. For this class, we are not distinguishing between a freight rate per load versus an operating cost per trip. So he's made it clear that that's not the realm that they're going to want to go diving into. So you'll be using the defaults and Frank, if you want to step on and address that even more clearly, come step right up.
No, I think I've been staying in the background because Michael's got 6 minutes to wrap this up, and there's a couple other things we want to point out. So, but that point about the operating costs when we get to more complex modeling outside of ASCM 621, or you get into a career position, it certainly will make a big difference whether you're talking about an operating cost versus a freight rate. One is what you're basically paying somebody else to do the service for you versus you're doing it yourself. That's basically the make or buy decision. But for this class, we're just, as Michael started out, we're trying to keep it simple just so that people grasp basic concepts of a supply chain.
Okay, Frank, what else did you want addressed?
There's a couple things, and so consider this my wrap up at the end of it. First of all, there's a couple objectives, at least for the people in my class, and probably so for Jim's as well. Number one, when you get out into a career, you're going to be confronted with new software that you've never seen before. This is not only a practice of learning the supply chain, it's also an opportunity for you to learn how to work a user manual so that you can learn a system, because a lot of jobs that you go into are going to be on-the-job training. It's not something that anybody can teach you prior to getting into that position. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to focus on.
Excuse me,
Tammy?
oh boy, sorry about this.
Tammy, can you mute?
Feedback. All right, there we go. My mistake. Frank, I'm going to activate your microphone again. You're active. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, that was one point, is that learning how to use a user manual and sort of teaching yourself a software is a skill that will help you in any future position that you get into. The other thing is, for my class, for certain, I'm considering this to be a group project. A lot of classes you'll take, they divide the class into 3 or 4 members and assign a particular project. For this one, the whole class is the group. So the expectation is when you're posting your weekly assignment outcomes, whether it's success or failure, you should be discussing that in there, and other students will comment upon that. They might provide suggestions on what you could have done to overcome a problem. But just consider this a group project. So that's my wrap up, and I'll give it back to you, Michael and Stephen, and thanks.
Jim, do you want to add some words? And I'm trying to unmute your phone. I can't tell if it's muted or not. If you're speaking, it must be still muted, and I can't seem to unmute it. I'm going to try to unmute everybody. Can we hear you now, Jim?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I
Can you hear me now?
I do.
Yeah, I just echo what Frank said. I think that was a real good synopsis, and we're going to approach SCM Globe, the collaborative case, in the same manner in this course to as a group, and I've shared that with them from the beginning of this course. And what I would ask is, like Frank said, be graphic, be clear, and don't hold back as far as what your experience was each week, because that benefits you in learning the SCM Globe. And from what I've seen in the past, it helps students who ran into problems adjust and correct the problems they have with running the simulation. So again, just echo what Frank said. I think that was very good advice.
Okay. Steve.
The whole point is to get in there and, explore. Certainly don't be afraid of it. Certainly check it all out. If you do run into a problem, first check the FAQs to see if it's addressed there. Second, go looking for the topic. Everything that you need is in here. Sometimes you might have to look around a bit to find, how it can help you, but it's here. We have provided all the information that you need to make a success of this. But we're also here. You can write us questions. If it's for a professor, we'll make sure that that it's addressed that way. We're not here to solve the problems for you. These challenges are for you as an individual student and as a part of a team to solve. So we'll help you with technical issues, but we can't solve other particular aspects of the challenge for you. So I wish you the best of luck, and I think you'll find that you'll have a pretty good time with this, because your professors are very, very good at guiding you through these.
Yeah, I have. I'll just echo what everyone has said so far. Have fun. If you're not having fun at it, you're not doing it right. I mean, we're not trying to entertain you, but we are trying to engage you. And so, and your ideas about how to make this clearer, how to make the software. We want the software to be transparent, because we want the software to be easy, but the challenges to be hard. We don't want you wasting brain cycles fooling with software, but we want you to really get engaged with figuring out the data and looking at the simulations and figuring out what might be a good way to improve your performance. When you start running your simulation data through those reporting templates, it's really going to start to make it come alive. You start to see how ops and finance are two sides of the exact same coin. So have fun. And if there's a technical problem, you can always click on this support ticket button. We'll get back to you, usually within 8 hours, always within 24 hours. So go for it.
Thank you all for your attendance.
Unless anyone has any final questions, that's a wrap. We're coming up on the hour. So any final questions, please type them in right now to the chat box. We'll stay on the air until we've answered all your questions. If you have any queasy, uneasy feelings, now is the time to ask that question. But otherwise, if you're good to go, then you can go.